The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests as individuals, and do not necessarily reflect those of advertisers or sponsors. This show is intended as entertainment and commentary only. The producers strive for verisimilitude, but nothing said on this podcast should be taken as fact by the listener or viewer without performing due diligence.
That existence, the physical universe, is basically playful. There is no necessity for it whatsoever. It isn't going anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at.
This is Keep Your Hat On, a show by three nerdy nobodies and one nerdy kind of somebody about nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is brought to you by the Narrowband Broadcast Network, NBBN. The focus is on you. By PodSquadPDX.com, painless podcasting, and by the kind support of KYHO fans everywhere through Patreon. Patreon, create on your own terms.
Coming up next, Chris and I chat with Tai about what else, COVID, as the bastard bug bites one of our own. Then, the return of the no longer lonesome stranger. Chris and I welcome back Dr. Mark and spend an inordinate amount of time talking about furniture, philosophy, and flooring? Anyway, as our dear Mr. Brumage and Carlos the Wonderfluff currently wing their way to sunny Arizona, it's up to me to say, let's get whatever the hell this is started. Here's me, Tai, eventually Dr. Mark, and like that Hot Pocket stain on your favorite Mandalorian t-shirt that never quite comes out all the way, Chris.
Shut up, knuckleheads. And welcome back. This is Keep Your Hat On, the show where hell even we don't know where we're going to go. I'm Andrew Scott, along with my good friends, Tai, Robert, Anthony. Oh, see, you did it to me again.
What? How did I
Louder.
disappear? All
Louder.
right. Hey,
Louder.
how
There.
are ya?
Perfect, thank you.
All right.
And Chris Bacano.
Howdy.
Yeah, well, okay, now you blew level, so
No.
this is like herding a bunch of drunk monkeys. Oh, my God.
I was just following instructions.
Yeah, that's what they all say. And then the next thing you know, we have war crimes.
Yeah.
So Ty's going to be with us here for a little bit. He's got to run off and do something. We are not entirely Dr. Mark Peterson-less. He will be with us later. But how's everybody been for the last couple of weeks? I will start off by saying COVID's entered our bubble. COVID's entered the family bubble. My partner Heather's mother wound up, and get this, you want to talk about a kick in the pants? She got Omicron from a birthday hug.
Oh.
Oh, goodness.
How wrong is that? That's
That
just like
bites.
insult
I mean,
on top of literal injury.
That's just
That's like lemon juice on a paper cut, right?
Pretty much.
yeah.
But yeah, I would agree that we're up there with that. Yeah. But she's doing really fine. And Mom, if you're listening, I love you. And everybody here says hey and
Yeah,
get well.
hey, Ma.
Just keep drinking tea and watching, Poirot. I would say Matlock, but I don't think that's a fair reference anymore. But no, she's doing really well. She was vax and boosted, and yeah, it was just one of those things. Her birthday.
How is she? How is her symptoms?
She's getting away with it easy.
Good.
Which is fabulous news for a 77-year-old woman.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
A friend of hers came over to give her happy birthday something. Her birthday is on Groundhog Day, so it was February 2nd. And it might have been February 1st or February 2nd, but this friend came over, gave her a hug, and then I believe that was on February 1st. And on February 2nd, Mom got a message saying, I'm positive for COVID. You should check yourself. And Mom already had a scratchy throat.
Oh, no.
And we had to harangue her a bit, because I shipped her up a bunch of rapid tests before she came down for Christmas. Because that was the admission ticket to Christmas, was everybody do a
Right.
rapid test.
Yep.
And she was like, "Oh, it's just a cold. It's just that." And Heather and I are both on the other side of the phone screaming, "Mom, take the damn test." And she took the damn test, and we got the damn call saying she's got the damn COVID. But she's doing really well. Nothing of any concern. She had a really mild fever, and just the big thing that we've been finding is body aches. But I want to take this moment to talk to you guys and our listeners about something that this is now the third occurrence in my bubble. I mean, I've had friends who've had COVID. I've had nobody in my family who's had COVID that I know of. As far as my brothers and sisters go, I know that at least one of my sisters has had COVID. But as far as symptoms, and particularly lingering symptoms, again, I'm a professional talker.
That's what you do.
As far as persistent symptoms, something that's really starting to come up in my circle of people is vertigo.
Really?
My buddy Mark, who you both know, he got Omicron about 6 weeks ago. And he said it was the worst body ache he's ever had that didn't involve being beat up in a back alley.
And that's something that he's always doing.
Exactly. Mark's just he's a baller that way, you know.
Right.
He's not. So he when he was getting better, he was just like, "Oh yeah, my body aches are okay. I don't have a temperature anymore, but I've been having the spins really bad." And I was like, "How long?" He's like, 2 days. I'm like, 2 days with the whirly bastards.
Yeah,
that reminds me of my 20s.
Yeah.
But,
right. Yeah.
Come to find out later that another friend of mine, who had actually had gotten Delta back in the day, was saying that suddenly out of nowhere, and they had Delta back in I think it was spring of 21, and suddenly they're having vertigo, just out of the blue.
They may have gotten reinfected again.
Well, that's a distinct possibility, and thanks for bringing that up, Ty. That with Omicron, we know that people who have had Delta or Alpha or any other variant previous to Omicron can be reinfected with Omicron, and not only reinfected, you can get a breakthrough case being fully vaccinated after having had COVID in the first place. You can wind up getting reinfected with Omicron. Omicron does not give a shit.
Right.
Omicron don't do that.
But it's interesting that you say this about the vertigo, because I got to tell you, I was trying to take care of some medical benefits that I have, or trying to take advantage of them, not take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to get a massage therapist that was really close to me, and get connected with that. And she had to call that appointment off for that very reason. She had gotten the Omicron earlier, before I signed up for services, and she was over it, but she canceled because of vertigo.
Oh, see? And I mean, if you think about it just on the surface level, it makes sense.
Mhm.
Your inner ear is one of the most sensitive organs that you have in your body. Those
Mhm.
tiny little hairs in that little pouch full of fluid. And then you introduce something like systemic inflation. And then you introduce something like systemic inflammation.
Inflammation, inflation. It's kind of the same thing.
A little bit. Yeah. Thanks for the backup.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense. And, it just points back to what we here at KYHO and most good medical professionals have been saying. And that is, okay, let's say that this is nothing but a bad flu type thing. You still don't want to get it because we don't know what the long-term ramifications are. And now,
Right.
2 and some years in, we're starting to see this. People are having these weird anomalous symptoms from out of the blue that they can't explain.
And I think
Yeah.
this was a reason. What you're talking about right now was just a reason why it was so easy for me to just go, yep, I'm going to go get the vaccine. And the reason of that is because with this flu, even though one year I had gotten the flu vaccination, I ended up getting influenza B,
Right.
and it sent me to the hospital. And on top of that, my partner ended up in the hospital multiple days. The influenza B is no joke.
To be clear, though, you both have respiratory conditions.
Yeah.
So that, and again, I also want to caution very strongly against causation and correlation here. I'm not a medical professional, neither is Chris, nor is Tai, nor is Dr. Mark. However,
Well, that's just it. I mean, it jumped over that vaccination, right? That flu shot that I got.
right.
Right.
I've had the flu. I've gotten the flu vaccination and caught in the flu, but it's never been this bad. This was like the big, heavy influenza.
Yeah,
right.
and that's just an
Right.
influenza B is a different beast.
And so when it came to this vaccine for this particular virus, this corona thing,
You were just running around with your sleeves rolled up, looking
Yep.
around for a needle.
it didn't take me long to run the odds and figure out which the best decision was.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think too, I mean, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've been talking openly, not just us, but we as a society and the medical community and the research community has been talking openly about long COVID,
Yeah.
long-term, post
Post-recovery COVID stuff.
post-recovery side effects, long-term damage, things of that nature. And it's always been with a view that, this is likely to happen. We don't know what it's going to be.
And a lot of that comes from the fact that, again, we need to remember that COVID is a disease that results from an infection with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And in that name is the term SARS. SARS is the parent family of these viruses. And of course, we all remember SARS from, shortly after the millennium.
Mhm.
What we knew about this type of virus is that people who have had SARS have had lingering issues. They're slightly different than the ones that we're seeing now. But what we know as a baseline is that SARS as a respiratory infection causes damage in places where you wouldn't normally look. And so that's why so many of us have been saying, you might survive it, don't get it, because we don't know what these long-lasting ramifications will be.
Yeah, I mean, we could realistically move into a phase where there is a condition known as chronic COVID.
Long haulers, they'll come up with some name for it, but I imagine you're absolutely right.
And I'm curious, walking back to the vertigo, is that showing up in any of the materials that are being released as a common symptom that they're seeing now?
What I discovered when my third person got a hold of me saying, dizziness, persistent dizziness.
Mm-hmm.
I did a thing, and it's definitely a thing. It's rare, but what I'm interested in watching is that up until recently, it was rare.
Mhm.
But now with Omicron, I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing the prevalence of things like persistent vertigo or orientation issues, where it's a kind of vertigo where it's not that you're dizzy, it's that your brain isn't able to interpret which direction you're in. But, Tai, when you wound up having your influenza B, did you discover any lingering issues? Did you experience any lingering issues?
No, not really. For me, it was
I caught you
that-
speaking up there. I caught you catching yourself and speaking louder. Thank you.
not a problem.
Hi, bud.
For me, what it was is it was about 5 days delirious in bed.
Ugh.
The lingering side effect was the weight loss. I think I lost like 15, 20 pounds in that week.
That is not a diet you want to go on.
No, it's not fun at all.
Was that because you couldn't keep food down?
I wasn't hungry, or I couldn't keep food down, and I just kind of just walked away and put my hands in the air and went, screw it, I'll just go to bed and I'll just buddy up to this. And
well, I'm
that'll be that.
And then
guessing
5 days later.
Yeah.
Massive dehydration too, probably.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I've got a wife that's a nurse, so the fluids get pushed on me whether I'm pushing the fluids or not.
Whether
Right.
you like it or not. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a case of happy wife saved my life. Tell you what, folks, we're going to be right back on the other side of this break. This is the Narrowband Broadcast Network. You are listening to Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Chris Vicano, and saying goodbye for this episode to Ty Robert Anthony. And we'll be coming back with Dr. Mark in just a second. Don't go anywhere.
Hey everybody, Michael, your stalwart announcer here, the voice of the Keep Your Hat On podcast. We really hope you're enjoying the shows we put out every month and the bonus goofiness we try and throw in. If you do, we'd really appreciate your support. While we'd love it if you could help us out with a monthly donation by heading over to patreon.com/NBBN, please don't forget that you can also support us by telling your friends, relatives, the hot Amazon delivery guy, hell, your potted fern, about the show, and do the like, click, and subscribe thing. That's free, and it helps us out more than you might suspect. We just want to keep putting something good out into this bananas world at this extra bananas time, and we want you along for the ride. No matter what, thanks so much for audio visualizing. Now, let's get back to the show.
Now we recording. Hey, stranger, how you be?
Okay.
Yeah?
You hear me okay?
Yeah, no, we're fine. Everything's fine here. Nobody's on fire. Everything's good. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Mark.
I have a spectacularly bad headphone in here. Let me try this. Let me try it on.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Much better?
that's better.
Ah, there you go. Well, you learned which ones to throw away.
Yeah, the ones I got on the plane.
Oh, no. Those aren't real.
I know. I have weird ears. See, so it's
Yeah.
I don't. Usually they don't stay in. I need like the kind that wrap around. You know, the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember back in the day when airlines' idea of headphones was literal tubes that go
the
up to
tubes.
the and there was a little speaker in every every armrest, and that's how you listen to shit on the airplane.
Yeah, it was a little bit like the tin can with the string thing.
They were tin can and string were better. I always felt like.
Did you ever do that, by the way? Did you ever do the string?
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I still remember when we tried this out in my backyard with literally 50 or 60 feet of string and two big Dixie cups.
Sure.
And we just thought, well, this is the dumbest thing ever. This never worked. And it was
then it
shocking.
blows your mind.
It was like, what else could we do?
I grew up with there were two farmhouses where we lived, and the guy who owned our house owned both.
Oh.
And the other house was about I want to say it was about 250 yards away.
Yeah.
And the bathroom of our house faced the house of our neighbors.
Okay.
And at one point in time when I was very little, like 5 or 6, the two families decided we were going to test this out. So, the absolute magic happens when instead of using string, you use high test fishing line.
Oh, baby. Yeah. That would be
the
great.
transmission is crystal clear.
Oh, I love it.
Marconi would have been proud. It was.
I wonder, this is a little bit like putting eavesdropping cameras into bathrooms now. It's in just like a can, This is a 1930s cartoon. A mom comes home and finds a can with a string in the bathroom.
We were creeping on each other. We were creeping on each other a long time. I mean, you can remember how many.
God bless this podcast.
How many sitcoms did we watch where somebody's listening through a wall with a
With the
glass?
glass jar.
Same principle works. By the way, I should probably jump in here and say, welcome back, Dr. Mark. Where you been? The
Oh,
podcast
hi,
has missed
everybody.
you.
So,
Yeah.
well, I only see 2 other hats here. We're missing a hat.
Yeah, Ty had a 1 o'clock that he had to go deal with, and you had things to deal with up until now. So this episode is just a wonderful, wacky quilt worth of
Oh, a
hats.
quilt worth.
A mix
Yeah.
and match.
That's a whole new word, quilt worth. I have been, well, thank you for asking. I have been trying to move.
I would comment on the bareness of your walls, but that's the only thing that I see on that camera shot anyway.
Oh, here,
so.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well, so you can see
Oh,
it
boy.
started there.
It has started, hasn't
Started
it?
there, and then it's like there's still ukuleles here, but those will be
Well,
moved
they'll
into
go last.
in a ritualized procession.
Right, exactly.
I have a couple of items like this. I have years ago we were buying furniture at Colders, which is always just terrible because it's like, okay, what sort of tacky middle class bourgeois stuff are we going to find? Okay, but we're in there, and I'm walking through it, and it's got all the standard issue, overstuffed suburban dream world furniture packed through there, and it's all horrible, But in a corner. I packed it already. I should put
Was
it on.
the one good piece?
No. It was a piece of decor, and I'll have to dig. I'll dig it out when I get into the new place. We'll try to remember to do this.
Gotcha.
It was a big bronze, about yay big, about the size of a big pumpkin, of a monkey sitting down holding a large glass bowl.
Wait, I remember seeing that.
I put it up on Facebook periodically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like I have this so I bought that sucker, and it's like the monkey goes with me everywhere now. And the reason for this is that I've used this parable in my classes from the beginning of time about catching monkeys with oranges, that thing. And Chris, you know this thing where you get a large clay pot. So in China, this is in southern China where they eat monkeys. You get a large clay pot with a small hole at the top, just big enough to fit an orange through, right?
And just big enough to fit a monkey hand through as it reaches in.
And so when you put the jar out, you show there are monkeys all over the rooftops there, and you would show the monkeys the oranges, and they'd all freak out. And you put the orange in the jar, and you walk away. The monkeys tear ass down to get the orange, and one poor monkey gets hold of the thing, and now the monkey is trapped because it can't. The size of the orange plus its hand, won't release it. And I thought about this. So I've been, as some of you probably know this, is I've been trolling. I've been trolling the trolls.
A certain side of the political spectrum,
on the Wisconsin Public Radio page.
Which is the other side of the political spectrum.
Well, I know people who work in it. It's really funny, and they're dedicated old school news people, right? But of course, that turns out the truth is political now.
Yeah,
insufficiently truthy, it turns out. Well, anyway, I think about this a lot, the monkey, because people get furious or angry. We hold on to beliefs long after that we find out that they're not true.
Yeah,
which is interesting to me, right? We all do this,
Yeah.
But if they would just let go of, if they're worried about getting their brains eaten, by the chef, if they would just let go of the orange, everything would be okay. But they don't even know they're holding on to the thing anymore.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
right.
So the monkey goes in next week. That's where I'm going. The monkey goes into the new house next week. That's sort of one of my mascots.
It should be in this order. It should be a second line procession of the ukuleles, followed by you walking with the monkey with Boomer at your side. That's pretty much.
I can't remember
walking through the streets like, all hello the gourd.
I was thinking of the Lion King. Simba.
While Elton John plays in the background.
Yeah. So moving is always fun, and it's really been weird to do it now because I'm technically I qualify as old now, which is really interesting. But
not only that, you built up an actual history there in that property. So there's got to be some mixed feelings.
It's really interesting. I had a long conversation with the house about it.
Good.
Because the house has been terrifically good to us. And to me, personally, here in West Bend, it's been...
Sure.
If I had to live in West Bend, this is the one place I really wanted to live.
Great little house.
Oh, and it's in a great little tuck-away neighborhood that nobody knows about. And it's up here in Barton, which is where,
Yeah.
which is
Shout out to Barton,
yeah, man,
Wisconsin.
which is a place that technically doesn't exist anymore.
No,
And
they erased it. What, about 10 years ago?
No. In the 50s, West Bend
Was
annexed.
it that long
Yeah,
ago?
I think it was
And
1953.
they already had the sign in the ground, so they said we're going to keep on referring to this little enclave as Barton, even though it's not really a thing.
When I got here, when I moved up here from, I mean, when I say like moved up here, I mean like half a mile.
Yeah, right.
Up here from West Bend, the old timers here are still pissed off about the annexation, and they'd say, you can imagine, it's like, oh, those people down there in West Bend, what's up with them anyway?
Oh, those city guys.
Oh, they think a lot about themselves,
Yeah, with their fancy coffee shops.
That reminds me a lot of an old neighborhood I lived in Seattle, which is called Ballard.
Yeah.
And Ballard, even it's not even just the old timers, the young folks are still pissed off about the annexation, which happened over 50 years ago.
There you go. Yeah.
And in fact, there's a whole movement. I mean, it's very tongue in cheek, but there's a whole movement with, I've got the baseball cap, and there are bumper stickers that
Bring
say
back Ballard.
No, they say free Ballard.
Free Ballard.
So, well, tell you what, folks, we're going to take a very quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to be discussing furniture.
Maybe.
On the Narrowband Broadcast Network, I'm Andy. That's Dr. Mark.
Still.
That's Chris. We'll be right. Still. Yeah, we'll be right back.
Yep.
You're tuned to NBBN.
The Narrowband Broadcast Network.
The focus is on you.
We have no problem with time before, but hey. So two quick things. Two things. One for both of you, and then one for one of you. I'll start with the latter. Mark, are you familiar with a guy named David Graeber?
Oh,
He's a writer. Let's see. How did he start out? He got bounced out of Yale.
that's a good start.
Right? Exactly.
Usually.
Kind of the whole Cornell West vibe with this guy.
Okay.
I've not read him.
That's really familiar. Let me look here.
Okay, so he wrote the big book that I guess he wrote that got a lot of tractions was Debt, the First 5,000 Years.
No, I know this guy. Yeah, he's
Okay.
the anthropologist, isn't he? And he just wrote this new book.
I think he might have been.
He just wrote this new book that's causing, out in the public press, that's like, it's like, oh, this is the best thing. It's like the history of time and space or something, right?
Yeah, the new book is called The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity. Interestingly, Heather's dad got a hold of both me and Chris today, saying this guy's blown his lid off. He got this book.
Yeah.
And what really floored me is he tipped his hand in that he listens to the podcast. And
David Graeber listens to this podcast?
No, Heather's dad does.
Oh.
And so
okay.
That would be really cool if David Graeber listened.
Well,
being that he's been dead
difficult.
for a year and a
that'd
half.
be
Yeah.
difficult.
Well, I don't know. Maybe our signal goes out that far. The internet's an amazing thing. But he mentioned, he said, because I said, I definitely will look into this. Thanks for this, Pop. It's right up my alley. And then he said, thought it might be. How about you KYHO guys reading it? Or is that too focused? I wouldn't want to mess with your structured anti-structure. But
we could do that.
We've been talking about doing the book thing, and I think this is actually a great topic and place for us to do it.
I haven't read it, but
I guess it's just out.
The word on the street is that, and it's had a kind of Jordan Peterson impact on people.
But that's what worries me. Is this everybody climbing onto a bandwagon they don't actually understand?
Oh, well, from what I've been reading in the historians and the anthropologists, other ones are talking. This is just the guy's just talking out of his ass.
Really?
Yeah. But I would love to have a look at it. I have no idea yet. That's just sort of what I've been hearing from the professionals.
I'm always a fan of making up my own mind, even no matter what the professionals say. But I do it in a way that reminds myself that, oh, by the way, you're listening to professionals, but you're not one of them. So,
Yeah.
caveat emptor that way.
It's a big honker
well,
too. It's
yeah.
really a monster book, I think.
Well, we
Well,
can go
and-
chunk by chunk. We don't got to all sit. I mean, I don't think any of us, except maybe you, have time. Once you get settled in, you'll be able to kick back
Yeah,
and
sure.
relax for
But
a
anyway,
minute.
but no, let's do it. Let's do it. I think it
Yeah.
would be great.
Okay. All right. Ty was down with the idea as well.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and to that point of the reviews you saw, I mean, as we all know, academic groupthink is something that never happens.
yeah, if you come in and you make a wave.
Especially when I first read the reviews about the content of the book, I thought, oh, that sounds right. And it's funny because I read history through the lens of the history of science and technology, right? Because that's what I spent time studying, all the tech going back to Ptolemy, and Mesopotamian paleoastronomy.
Oh, hey, man,
shit
and
was
the
hot.
Antikythera mechanism.
Ooh, listen to you.
Well, you're familiar with that, right?
I thought I was.
Yes. Okay. It's the thing that they found off Antikythera in a dive, and it's got like 37 different moving gears.
Yeah.
And they discovered that it was able to accurately predict sun and moon course and predict all the solar and lunar eclipses up through like the year 3000.
Yeah, this is that thing they had. It was all clunked up, and they had to X-ray the thing and figure it out from that.
It was my favorite thing is somebody recreated it working out of Legos.
Oh, how awesome is that?
Yeah, that
is cool.
Well, that was awesome.
That is cool.
When you look at the original uses, especially, so when I was in graduate school, I did this course on the history of science, and I thought, well, that'll be interesting. I had to do an outside class, so I spent a year at Victoria College with one other student. It's a really pretty girl who I hit on relentlessly to no effect. And
it's pretty bad when you're having to fight a pool of one.
That's right.
And you're still not getting it.
I mean, I was not a jerk about this, but I was, do you want to have coffee and talk now? It's like, and I kept thinking, it's like, well, she's got to be involved with something now. So I don't know, maybe I don't know. And it was okay, but I would always remember that part of it. But we walked back through Ptolemy's orbitals, and so we actually had to do the geometric analysis that Ptolemy used, because Ptolemy used effing Euclidean geometry, to calculate orbits and epicycles, and it's just absolutely staggering and completely commonsensical, because there's no other way they could do it. It's like taking a stick and using, okay, here's a stick.
Yep.
This is what I have available. It's now, how can I figure shit out with this? And literally, it's like sticking it up against measurements and stuff.
And he got it to within 500 yards.
Oh dear!
He was known for precision. I mean, he was very good at math.
You have to remember that one of the one, and this is something that just still kills me. We taught, the usual popular version of Copernicus is that one day Copernicus went, "Oh my God, wait, the sun is at the center," right? Copernicus made no new observations. All he did was look at the math and thought, how can we simplify this? And he just started moving planets around. He moved the sun to the center, and things kind of went snap. And it was like, oh. So
no, there were so many others before Copernicus that understood heliocentrism, including what's his name? Tycho Brahe was already a heliocentrist at the time. There were two of the people that Copernicus was liberally lifting from in the first place. They were all heliocentrists. Mm-hmm. He was just the one that, like you say, he simplified the math, and then popularized it
and took the credit. Yeah, And
I don't even know if Mark, he didn't take the credit for it.
I'm looking ahead here. Copernicus beat out Tahe by about 100 years.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
All right, I'm remembering that backwards.
Yeah. No,
I just remember that,
and it was
more than anything. I remember Tycho Brahe had a fake nose because of
the silver one, right? Was that him?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, what's fascinating about that is with the math and everything was he just fiddled around with the math. There were no new observations. And what's weird is that even though that our senses, this is another whole episode, our senses tell us that the sun goes around the earth, right? I mean, that's what they'd say. But none of us believe it because we have a different paradigm in our brain that tells us no. Now, it turns out the paradigm is probably true. Right?
I'd be careful about saying none of us.
Yeah. There's always going to be some outlier in a basement in his mom's
Well,
house.
I think the flat earthers.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, so I remember years ago when this really came home to me. I was up on a canoe trip up in northern Ontario, and it wasn't the original harmonic convergence business, but it was like a year or two after that. So there was this one night. So it was like August 3rd, and I'm up in northern Algonquin Park, like a week away from any road.
Right.
And so it's pitch black, and the sun has just gone down. And so I'm looking, and I was a star geek, growing up, and I realized I was able to see Mercury, which I've only ever seen it a few times in my life, right? And there it was, boom, little pinprick.
Yeah, bare-eyed. I think I've only seen it 2 times.
Maybe. It's hard, right? Because you need that good horizon line and stuff. And,
yeah,
okay.
Well, that and light pollution since 1980.
Oh, for true. So,
God.
So I'm looking at that. And there's Mercury, and then, look, there's Venus. Okay. And then out here I see Mars, and then there's Jupiter, and like the moon is trailing back here. It's like I get everything lined up. In my mind, what I did was I turned this way.
Yeah.
There you go. I kind of
for our listeners, because we're into a segment of the show again, we just got the 90-degree visual reinterpretation of life from Peterson.
Right. I leaned over as far as I could to my left and lined up the planets the way they had looked on the star chart in my room when I was 5.
That's awesome.
And I figured out which lane they went into. Okay, there's Mercury and Venus. Okay, they're the closer lanes to the center, and there's Mars out there. So our lane is between those two. And then here's Jupiter out there. So that lane is even further out from Mars. And then the moon is orbiting us, but going through now. All this happened in like a heartbeat. But I realized that there was...
Love that Satori kind of thing.
Yeah, but there was nothing in my experience that should have told me that that's what it really was. Because all of my experiences say that the Earth is sitting still and everything goes around us.
Right.
And that's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Your first experience of a priori versus a posteriori.
No, it was not my first experience. That happened.
Well, no, you're right. I was just going to say, I was making you be 10 in my mind. I'm sorry. This was when you were an adult.
I will tell you, the first one was my freshman year in college when I was introduced to the terms a priori and a posteriori. And I asked the professor, I said, so wait a sec. So give me an example of something that I would know prior to experience. And he said, well, arithmetic, 1 and 1 equals 2. I said, well, how did I learn that 1 and 1 equals 2? It's like somebody told me that, which means that math should also be a posteriori, following experience. No, but you know it a priori. It's like, well, but I didn't know it without having somebody tell me.
But what about language when you throw it in there?
I had to learn language by listening to somebody, right?
Yep.
You know, this sounds a bit.
I don't believe. I no longer believe in the a priori. Is what I'm saying here.
This reminds me of my philosophy 100 class in college.
Isn't that awful?
When we were reading,
my fondest memories of trauma.
We had good times though in there, Andy.
We did. We did.
I think it was Plato, and he was talking about how Socrates took a slave and had him trace a triangle in the sand.
I'm impressed, by the way, that you remember that, Chris. That's awesome.
Explains the Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah, that's Meno. That's in the Meno.
Like, yeah, and he's like, yeah, you're a slave. You wouldn't have known that. You wouldn't have been taught math, but yet there it is.
The doctrine of remembrance. Yeah. Well, they did that because, and it's interesting because I've kind of come around to that view. That he remembered it because he was alive before he was born. And he just before he was born, he saw all of the truths of the universe. And our consciousness is only able to remember so many of them.
And he had residual remembrance.
He was arguing that it was all in there. It just needed to be teased out.
I will agree that for me, a priori, the concept of a priori knowledge really teeters on that line of woo-woo.
I think so too. I think so too.
And I don't dismiss it as an ardent agnostic in almost all things. I've had enough experiences that have made me go, and enough experiences that made me go, yeah, somebody told me that and I just forgot that they did.
The gist of it is, and this is the interesting part to me, is like the psychologists are going to eventually figure this out.
Psychologists don't listen to our podcast.
No.
Sin boldly.
No. But they're going to figure this out because the rough idea is that a priori knowledge works because there's a certain structure to consciousness that requires us to know things in a certain way.
Right.
And on the one hand, that's like stupefyingly obvious, right? Because it's like, you have consciousness. I wonder if consciousness has any impact on how we know the world. It's like, could it?
Yeah.
But the a priori thing has these deeper roots, which is, and I'll just give you, this is the argument I'm making in the book on Aristotle too.
We're getting a sneak peek, people.
Which is that so the authority for knowledge, of course, after Christianity took over the West was God and the Church, right?
Right.
And so why does 1 and 1 equal 2? And the answer is because God wanted it that way.
Yeah.
And if you argued with this, you didn't argue with that.
No. You lost a hand.
That's it, or some body part, those 2 fingers. And but then the Enlightenment shows up, and following the Black Death, I've always thought this was the key to this was, after the Black Death subsided, in the 1400s, people kind of went, well, I wonder if God was trying to kill us off. I wonder how good God can be. And we didn't die, and the apocalypse didn't happen. And of course, everybody's economic status improved dramatically.
Yeah.
Because they had built the production capacity for everybody in Europe in 1350. And by 1450, there were like a third fewer people.
Yeah.
And so everybody's standard of living went up. They invented underwear because they had excess cloth production capabilities. All right. So everything got better. The Enlightenment shows up. People go, well, maybe we don't need God to make this stuff work. And so what happens in the meantime, of course, is rationality moves in. We can reason this out ourselves.
The age of reason.
But the reasoning that they put on the throne was just another substitute for the God.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
And it's like that rationality is like became an authority. And it's like, but rationality.
They deified reason.
They deified reason. That's my take on this. Yeah. That's what happened.
Ain't disagreeing with you.
And I'm not talking about, and Chris, I'm not talking about like just thinking things through carefully.
Right.
There's this sort of belief that rationality was this disembodied thing that was not affected by the world we live in on the way to getting to where it was.
Yeah.
And it's this Cartesian, separate, transcendent.
Well, and that's when we start.
Problem.
That's when we start seeing treatments of reason in art as a standalone goddess.
Oh, I look at those. I look at Donatello and like the Brunelleschi's. The pictures of the checkerboard squares in Renaissance art, and this is rationality imposing itself on the visual field. You can actually
order.
Yeah,
order.
So yeah, you just brought up Descartes, and that's where I was kind of headed with my question, and why I was sort of frowning and making muttering noises.
By the way, listeners, he was frowning and making muttering noises. I'll try to amplify them in the mix.
Rhubarb.
Mutter. So to some degree, the sense I had is that reason became almost an apologia for God in the sense of coming back to Descartes and the Cartesian sort of worldview.
Mm-hmm.
If the universe is a great clockwork, there has to be a clockmaker.
Well, yeah, but that we replaced God in that role. The clockmaker argument, by the way, is William Paley, and that actually didn't happen until the 19th century.
Yeah,
weirdly enough, because they were trying to restore God to the order of things. But this idea that there's something innate in us, right, that's not caught up in getting dirtied by the physical universe, right?
Right.
It's this transcendent thing. That's what Descartes characterized.
Yeah, an immutable truth,
that
right?
thing. Well, it's almost like it's like your soul is separate from your body and not subject to the laws of time and space. As time went on, of course, and as rationality kind of started working out things in the world around us, the other reason, what reinforced this idea that rationality had to be, the other phrase for this typically is the Newtonian observer.
Right.
And so Newton had this idea that you could stand kind of outside of the universe and to take account of it, because if you were in the universe, the flux of cause and effect, that can affect your rationality, and we can't have that. And it was like, well, man, that happens to me all the damn time. I'm perfectly rational about what I should be eating, but man, I walk by the potato chip aisle at Costco, and it's like rationality goes offline.
Don't look to my left.
Kettle chips. It's the kettle chips.
Kettle chips for life.
Oh,
man.
this begs an interesting question to me. That is it possible to objectively observe something without polluting the observation with interpretation?
Awesome. That's the question, dude. That is, and
you wind up with two things in this regard. Then you wind up with this one idea like Giordano Bruno had, where the soul is in the body, because really all this was throughout for up until the late 19th century was this search for the soul and the seat of the soul. And Bruno said the body is actually the soul. The body is the vessel of the soul, but not just the vessel as in holding. It is the soul.
This
the
is
soul
why they
emanates
burned him
from the
there
body. That's exactly why. They're like, really? You like your soul? Let's light it on fire. But then the other thing, Chris, like you just mentioned, this winds up being, you start getting into the quantum realm of things and, double slit experiment. And are you affecting the are you affecting the thing in question by
the
observing
phenomena?
It? Versus are you part of that? There's this idea of, a photon goes through two slits and does its thing.
Right.
If you observe it, it's different. Then you've got people asking, well, those are two different circumstances. One circumstance is a photon doing its thing on its own. And then the other circumstance, an intrinsically different thing, is the system of the three things: the photon, the slits, and you, the observer. They're inherently different than the other one.
Well, and in my question, yes, you're. I mean,
boy, we are a long way off from IKEA, aren't we? Well, actually, now that I think of it, maybe we're
going to get
we could
quantum IKEA instructions.
There
you go. Think about it.
Yeah.
I'm right on board with you. I mean, I'm following along on observation affecting the phenomena, but the heart of my question is, are you able to dispassionately and objectively observe a phenomena correctly?
Right.
Hang on one second.
Chris's ass is ringing people.
How does he do that?
It's just a reminder going off.
They never come up.
Chris's ass is reminding him of something.
So, Chris, let me answer this.
Yeah.
So there's two answers to this question. There's the officially sanctioned answer of Western civilization. And that answer is absolutely. You can discern the objective reality about the world using rational processes. That's the official answer. The real answer, of course, is like, no. All observation is interpretation. Has to be.
Yeah.
And now, and it's like, that should be
because we're looking through lenses and filters that are put into place by previous experience.
Your parents, your culture, your biological dispositions. It's like,
all
of course you are. Now,
the
of course you are.
scientists who did the experiment first.
The zip code you grew up in.
My God, yes, that's good. And so this is like the zip code theory of hermeneutics. Oh, I love this. Okay, so
thank you. It's one of my favorite words.
Oh, this is.
It's not zip code. It's hermeneutics.
I want a footnote.
Let me write that down.
I want a footnote credit on that.
You got it. You got it. Hermeneutics.
You've earned something I haven't yet.
Oh, it's all in there. You guys are going to get footnoted up. I decided, that these books I'm writing are going to be more Malcolm Gladwell than academic.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so
I'm
fuck
on
it, man.
board.
I'm just like, I'm tired of this. Well, yeah, but this is why, Chris. It's like there's a lot of people.
It's not like you have a career to protect anymore.
Ever. I never had a career to protect. No.
No,
I had a life that I got to enjoy. That was the difference.
There we go.
That's
a whole different discussion.
That's the difference between me and a lot of my academic colleagues, I think. Well, this idea that there's this disembodied reason that keeps you at a safe distance from the world. It's really fascinating. It was like, this is a real home to me because I actually have an article about this in the Owl of Minerva back around 1996 on practical and theoretical knowledge. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Hegel actually talks about this and like the most commonsensical ways imaginable, where he says that when you think about things, we like to think about things theoretically and we like to think about things in a practical way. And when we do it theoretically, he says, theory doesn't want to touch things except in thought because it doesn't want to disturb the truth of them.
Yeah.
And then he makes this hilarious joke. This is actually the title of one of the original articles I wrote, which is called Animals Eating Empiricists. He says that animals are actually more realistic than philosophers are because when philosophers and scientists confront an object in front of them, they grant to the object a kind of inviolable objectivity, right? Which can only be penetrated with thought. He says animals don't operate under this at all. Animals see something and they just jump on it and eat it. Which was pretty.
That's what I do.
Which was pretty funny in 1806, I guess. So,
well, actually, it's funny you should mention that.
Does this get at sort of what you're talking about, though?
It does. And first of all, little footnote and possible for a future topic, but what you're getting at is actually one of my big takeaways from having watched Don't Look Up, which is, man, the animals have it so much better.
And we'll be getting to that. I promised that on a previous show. We'll get to it. I haven't seen it yet.
Let me come back to the philosophy.
You really want to.
I just want to open the door on that tangent. I don't want to go down it.
All right. I'm shutting up.
But, as
he saw the title of the podcast, right? He saw that.
Yes.
That was Peterson jumping in on you, not me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Go ahead, Chris.
As I sort of chew on all of this and think about it and explore, this sort of thought space, right? The farther down the road I go into it, the more absurd I find the notion that we can that it is possible to be purely objective.
Yeah.
And I think when I think we're at some level aware of that, in our nature, because when we try to be objective, what we're doing is we're engaging in the exercise of trying to remove our biases from the observation, trying to remove.
I'm going to go even further than this. I'm going to say we're trying to remove our bodies from interacting with the world.
Yeah.
I would go even further.
And we hate the idea that our bodies include our brains, which include our mind.
Yeah. But I think you're right onto this, Chris. And by the way, just to make you even more unhappy and let you join me in my unhappiness, this idea which now, you say it, it's like, oh, it's so great. Every good idea I've ever had was already explored thoroughly by monks by 1300. And so true it is with this. And Kierkegaard especially, by the way, explored this question of subjectivity.
Oh, yeah.
And the only reason that this, you have to go, well, what the hell? The only reason all this stuff comes up is because there's a pre-existing condition, which is this pre-existing belief that absolute objectivity is even possible or matters, right?
Yeah.
And that's the reason. And so you raise things like, and I get into this with the postmodern, my friends who are postmodernists and post-structuralists and have hyphens in their
listeners. There was a professorial eye roll involved with that.
Where they'll talk about it's like, well, no objective truth is possible. Therefore, everything is purely subjective. And see, here's the thing. That's not true either, right? Because it's like, we're talking to each other over the internet. The internet could not have been constructed on how you feel about things, right? There's math involved. There's all sorts of objectively discernible properties. The difference is that these objectively observable properties, which are grounded in what we think of as science, right, are probabilistically based as opposed to absolute certainty.
Interesting.
And the fact that it's like 99.97% likely, which it is, that doesn't make it logically certain. And that's a qualitatively different kind of thing from.
And maybe this is where we get to a platform for some kind of objectivity is, okay, I observe a phenomena in the world. Okay. And you observe the same phenomena.
Cheers to that.
And you, Mark, observe the phenomena.
I am.
And
right
Andy,
now, yes.
you observe the phenomena. And then all three of us come together, we compare notes, and we look for the overlap. We look for the consistencies.
That's it.
And that gives us an idea of, okay, this we can agree on is the objective truth of this phenomena.
I think that's how science works, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you get 30
on
people.
Paper.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Theoretically, that's how theory works. Right. When you look at the difference, theory works great in theory, right?
So recursive.
But that's
we've gone all meta.
And it's
here.
like
recursive and meta.
And I will tell you the metaphor. And so I have a bias about how to understand what we're talking about. And that is that, when I was in college, I was really bad at math. And they made me take the Math for Dummies class, and I flunked out of calculus a couple of times, and I ended up doing my math in statistics. And I think Andy knows this because I usually used to talk about this all the time in class. I still do. I loved statistics. I think I got a minor in it because it was about something, right? Algebra wasn't about anything but like stats. And it turns out later on too, this is how things work in real life. I had one of the great professors of my life, Professor Ranishek. People still talk about this guy at South Alabama. One of the best professors I ever had taught statistics, if you can believe a thing like that. And if you're going to teach stats, you better be freaking good, right? Right.
Well, and math is definitely easier to get your arms around when it's got a real world external
and
referent.
So here's the deal. So to describe what you said mathematically, I always go back to statistical regression analysis, where you take all of these different points of view and you find a line that fits. And some of us aren't going to agree perfectly with what it probably, what the indication is. But over time, we're going to find out. And we can argue about this all day, but the reality is like that's how we figure stuff out. That's how we've always figured stuff out.
Yeah. And it reminds me,
which is very practical,
one of the greatest things that anybody ever taught me about statistics is on the other end of the internet cable to me here, because I remember when I was struggling so bad in stats, and you took me aside and you said, Andrew, stop thinking that statistics is about anything.
It's pretty good.
It worked.
Yeah,
I got a C+.
Yeah, you learn about Ranishek. What I always loved about Ranishek was when I can still remember this so vividly. One of the students was trying to figure out why. So we were talking about, and I'm going to go a little bit geeky here for just a heartbeat, but I love this. This really set a tone for my whole life. We had just started to do t-tests in intro stats as opposed to z-tests, right? And with z-tests, this is sample size is larger than 30, and t-tests, sample size is smaller than 30. And some guy, and Ranishek was going on about, and of course with t-tests, if with a sample size of only 15, if it's properly randomized and correlated through the proper equations, we can learn quite a lot about the population based on that sample. And some kid at the back had just lost it. And he goes,
this is the moment where he cracked.
He just cracked. And he just went, wait, bullshit. This was in class. And Ranishek was a fairly formal guy, but he didn't bat an eye. And he goes, well, here's what I mean. If we go to in South Alabama, we were not allowed to have football in those days. We had one of the great baseball teams in the United States in those days. South Alabama, we had Casey Stanky, who had played on the St. Louis Gas House Gangs with Leo DeRocher was our coach, man. Anyway, okay. He says, you go to the baseball game this weekend. There's 5,000 people there. You get a random sample of 5 people. You ask them to fill in a questionnaire about anything. And from that sample of 5, you can actually predict with relative likelihood the degree to which everybody else in the audience is of that 5,000 people will answer those questions. The kid goes, that doesn't make any damn sense. And Ranishek said, well, he says, it actually works out mathematically. And the kid says, well, how could that possibly be the truth? And so here's what Ranishek said. He goes, because t-tests are robust with regard to sample size. And the kid says, what the fuck does that mean? And Ranishek said, it means that the principle of robustness applies. Now the kid goes, wait, what?
Poor bastard.
Robustness? What in the hell? What are you talking about? And Ranishek goes, this is a very good question. You deadly see it. He is completely deadpan. This is a very good question. He says, in order for me to answer this question in a way that you can understand it, you must first complete your undergraduate degree in mathematics with an emphasis in statistics, and then enroll in a good graduate program in statistics, during which you will take a full complement of courses during the first 2 years of your master's degree. And then in the first year of your PhD program, assuming you pass your comprehensive exams, you will take 2 classes. The first one is called Robustness 1, and the second one is called Robustness 2. And after you've had those classes, you'll understand my answer to your question. And there's this long pause. and everybody's like dumbfounded. And the kid finally goes, do we need to know this for the test? And Ranishek says, and this is the beauty of this. This is the moment, right? This answers your question, Chris. Ranishek says, no, you don't need to know this for the test. You don't need to know why statistics works. You just need to know how to make it work.
Yeah.
And it was like everybody in the class just went, oh, that's
a light bulb
we can
moment.
do that. And Ranishek said, yes, you can. And this is why that guy was a fucking brilliant professor. One of the best I ever had.
That is good. And it's a good place to take a break. And
if I could, can I circle
apparently
back just
it's not
really
a good,
quick?
It's not a good place to take a break.
Yeah, this is very short. I just want to circle back and pose the question. Did we just make the case that reality is indeed subject to popular opinion?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Because that's what it sounded like to me.
No, our understanding of reality might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And don't make me bring up Euclidean versus Platonic solids, because that's a whole different segment. We'll be right back on the Narrowband Broadcast Network. I'm Andrew. That's Dr. Mark.
Yes.
That is the ever-questioning Chris, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Those are more questions, Chris.
They were. Yeah, I know. That turned into something. It's really like it happened for us. Hey, everybody. It's Andrew from the KYHO podcast. Just here with my hat in my hand, hoping that you're going to help us out. Do us a favor. Hit like, click, subscribe, whatever we like you options there are on the device that you're listening on right now, and support the podcast for free. If you got a few extra bucks and you're enjoying the show, do us a favor and support the podcast with your money. You can just head over to patreon.com/NBBN and throw us a couple bucks. Maybe buy us a coffee. Anyways, we're glad that you're here, and we're glad that you're listening. And remember, keep your hat on, because we may end up miles from here. All right, back to the show. And we're back for what appears to be the final segment of this episode of Keep Your Hat On. We're it's a loosey-goosey experience
Who's
here
Lucy
today.
Goosey, by the way? Do we know?
Right?
Do we know? We don't know.
No, I've never met.
We don't know.
No. But I'm Andrew, of course, with Dr. Mark and Chris. And Dr. Mark is joining us again for the first time in 2 episodes.
Thank goodness.
He's missed all. What do you mean? Thank goodness you haven't been here for 2 episodes.
It's nice to take a breather from. And what Andy's referring to, of course, is that I am relocating from the lovely and beautiful West Bend, home of the toaster oven and the air popcorn maker.
That's right.
I'm relocating to the east side of Milwaukee, which is sort of close to the lake.
City.
The big city.
Oh man, you missed an absolute golden opportunity. Moving on up to the east side.
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah.
Except the east side of Harlem is not the same as the east side of Milwaukee.
No.
That's
There's a
fact.
slight difference in spectrum.
Yeah, a little bit. If you
You're
cross the
going to be
river, if you get over to River
experiencing.
West, if you cross the river, it turns back into a real American city. But in the meantime, I'm going to be living about 5 blocks from the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee.
That's going to make a great commute.
And for the significant other who works at the film school there, she has about a 5-block commute now, and I'll have about 40 minutes back out here to Best Went.
On a good day.
There's sneaky routes
What's
out here.
I-94 been like lately?
So you don't do that anymore. The sneaky route out of downtown is you snake over to Fond du Lac Avenue, which is 145, and then zip zap,
you
baby.
go past my house.
That's right.
My old house.
Yeah, I'll honk when I do that.
Yeah.
But so the big excitement has been we've been. So the thing about being involved with somebody who is involved in film production technology.
And note to you, Chris. Alex is in film production.
My ears are perking up.
Our boy is working towards film school.
Oh, sweet.
So,
It turns out the Peck School at the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee was just re-ranked again in like one of the top film schools in the world. Believe it or not. So it's true. Anyway, the thing about living with somebody who teaches editing professionally is that everything has to look right.
That's why I
Yes.
was really pleased when Alex and watching our old video series went, oh, the edits are really good.
Oh, she liked the production. She was all about that, dude. Yeah. So it's like, people say it's like, oh, I will tell you, I don't want to speak out of school so much, but actually I'll save that story for another time. No, I'll save it now. We ran into,
you're not going to remember.
No, I won't remember. We were out furniture shopping, and we ran into this guy and his family. They were shopping for their daughter for an apartment they wanted to furnish in Greenwich Village. So I'm thinking, oh, money. Well, anyway, I get to talking to this guy, and we're just chatting. He said, yeah, I'm just moving back to Milwaukee. I've been away a long time, and I've been running restaurants in Vegas, and I'm coming back to Milwaukee to take over sort of some family businesses we had here. I said, well, that sounds great. And he was talking and say, well, and we've always tried to, we've had to, with the COVID and stuff and the epidemic, we've had to kind of up our service to people in order to keep our customers happy.
I was just going to say, what does that mean? Not infect them?
What he means is like improve the service. He's been hiring like jazz trios and stuff to play in the restaurants. And I said, this is a brilliant idea. I said, in fact, the people who do that really best here in town, I guess you probably already run into them, are the Alorobras. And Andy, remember that Alorobras in Milwaukee. And they have a series of really first-rate, really awesome restaurants. The kind of restaurant where you go and you go, I don't care how much it costs. It's just that good, right?
Yeah.
And the guy says, thank you very much. That's us. I'm Paul Ballarota. Well, anyway, I don't remember where I was even going with this, except Alex is in the room at the time. Oh, he says, he's talking to Alex about getting some of her interns to create restaurant instructional videos.
Oh,
and it's like, yeah, which sounds great, except Alex's students usually end up interning for like Spielberg and stuff.
Yeah, right.
So it's like,
no, I've done a bunch of voiceovers for
restaurant stuff and things.
Yeah, I worked for a company in South Africa that did training videos for hospitality and food service.
Anyway, I think it might be prudent if we delete my comments about Mr. Ballarota.
I think we probably will. Or I'll blank out the name.
So anyway, okay. Yeah. So, but the important. So let's we can spool this back. The important thing about living with somebody who is a film editor is that everything has to look right. And that includes the floors.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
And, I was kind of iffy about this until she started showing me examples. And I realized that I was a complete idiot about this kind of thing. And, when you get into these relationships, it's really important to find out what each of you are really good at and to recognize one's own limitations
and when to hand it off.
And so
to the other
person. And the floors are beautiful. And so that's coming up. And so now that the floors are done, now we can actually start getting moved in and stuff.
Well, and the thing is, the floors are way more important than anybody thinks. If you think about it, you look at those damn things
all the time.
You can do something about your walls. You can do something about your furniture.
That's good, Andy.
But honestly, unless you're talking about just slapping down a bunch of rugs, you're going to be looking at that every day for the time that you spend alive in that box.
Exactly. So Alex.
So I'll back Alex.
Oh no! And so she even says, she goes, we got this thing finally figured out. We lucked out because of the supply chain stuff. The normal sources that we were looking at were like, we can get you those floors in 12 weeks. It's like, no. I'll just go buy plywood, which will be expensive as hell now, right? It's like $65 a sheet. Okay. So, But anyway, we found a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. And it turned out there was
all good things happen.
There's a wonderful local Wisconsin-based company out in Heartland, Wisconsin.
Oh, beautiful Heartland.
Who had contacts.
Heartland of Heartland.
Yeah, who had contacts with some mill in Maine. and they said, oh yeah, we got that. How much do you need? And can we get it here by Monday? I was like, yes. Okay. So we did. And so Alex managed all this beautifully. But then she was apologizing. She goes, I'm sorry I obsessed so much about flooring. And then I realized that I was thinking of the metaphor is like, this is the flooring that my new relationship is going to live on, and we better get a good floor.
Yeah.
And it was like,
yeah,
it's a little heavy-handed, but you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
It's a great way to think about it. And, coming from my background, my first year in college was architecture.
Oh, yeah.
I was studying architecture. And, as you guys were discussing this, one observation about floors, it actually is really important to be attentive to floors because aside from bedtime, your floor is the one part of your house that you are in constant physical contact with.
Physical contact. This, Andy said something to me, which I really liked when we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. And it's
I've been in on the whole floor adventure from the time the boxes.
And you made this great.
Up.
We have like 3 boxes left over. I'm thinking about making benches out of this stuff. It was the most beautiful. It was the most beautiful maple I've ever seen.
Good material, man.
Andy made this great observation, which was that your feet can tell.
Yeah. And they can think about it.
Yeah, that's what you were saying, Chris. It's like, and they can. And it's like, I live on the floor.
And it's part of, exactly. You're not pressed up against a wall in your house. You're not pressed up against the ceiling, but you constantly make, and so that is your connection to the house.
I like it.
And think about it. I mean, we can all think to an experience where we walked on a cheap floor, a laminate, composite material thing, and there's a weird give to it, and it doesn't. But then when you're walking on real hardwood, real good, well-made hardwood floors, there's a feeling of stability that comes from it. There's a feeling of contact. Oddly enough, there's a feeling with contact of nature.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started about the smell.
The quality of this stuff was breathtaking, by the way. And this is like from my construction days. It was like the new machining and stuff they have in the factory. This is factory finished, by the way.
Right.
So it was like sweet every way from Sunday. But, what was fascinating about this too, you're talking about like the engineered or veneered and stuff. We looked at all that.
Yeah.
This is 3/4 inch hardwood maple.
Good.
And it didn't cost any more.
No.
And it was like, why would anybody not get this? It's like,
not enough people.
It went in like a dream. It took people it took the crew like 3 days to do 1,600 square feet of this stuff.
And there's nothing more gratifying than watching a good flooring crew.
Oh, those guys were sweet.
Oh man, it's and you just like, you're not even fetishing the tools or anything. You're just going, you guys are just the shit.
Yeah, you
I
could
can
say
tell
these guys.
this is all you do.
I went over everything. Yeah. Alex, of course, went over everything with a fine-toothed comb, and they did a great job. That's true.
Awesome.
That's true.
Well, and one final observation about floors, and this is from my own experience as a homeowner of multiple different houses, is floors have a real personality to them and a uniqueness to them.
Yeah.
There's that squeaky spot where it wasn't laid just right, or where the boards have aged and separated just a little bit, but that's part of it. And you walk across that, and if you don't hear the squeak, you feel like something's wrong.
Yeah.
It becomes part of your relationship with the house.
No, you're absolutely right.
That
floors have a distinct character.
I will tell you guys, this house, which I have loved, I've been so grateful to live in this wonderful house. I live in this sort of grandma 1920s era bungalow, right?
Yeah.
And when we looked at this place the first time, we were in one of the back rooms, and the whole place was covered with this like horrible brown shag. These are people who didn't even go with like amber or avocado. It was like brown shag.
There's a lot of history and DNA.
A lot of pain. Seemed to. Anyway, we went to one of the back rooms, and my former wife peeled up the carpet, and we looked. And it was the standard issue 2 1/4 inch maple. Every other board in this house is bird's eye or tiger stripe maple, and we thought we could just sell the floors for veneer and pay off the mortgage.
I was going to say, Mark,
no kidding.
You'd probably make more money raising the house and just selling
the floors,
all the hardwood.
I know. It's the most beautiful stuff, and it was probably harvested in 1910, right, and then milled out in the early 20s. And it's like, but anyway, that's how floors. You're right, Chris. Like it's just like you live on it. It's there with you all day. So I finally got the flooring done, and now I should be accessible again to do things that are not involved with moving, which happens a week from Wednesday.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind. You should have enough elbow room before the next episode to get yourself in and get settled. But how's the bed disassembly coming?
So I have a couple. I have a couple of, because I bought this house when I was still in my 30s and 40s, right? A young man of limited means. I have a lot of IKEA furniture, which I've been told will not happen in the next iteration.
Ooh, yeah. That law got laid down
We're
right
60 years old
fast.
now, and it's like, oh, wait, I love IKEA, by the way. But anyway, okay, so here's the deal. It's like, but I didn't want to throw them out because nowadays it's like, it's really hard to give away stuff.
Where do you live?
No, Habitat and Goodwill.
Oh, you mean legitimately?
Oh, as opposed to just putting it up on
into...
Craigslist. Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about like
right. I was just gonna say you're talking to the wrong. I just had somebody haul away a washer and dryer.
Oh no, I got to do that later on this week. Yeah, I got to do the washer and dryer later this week. But Habitat and Goodwill will not take like mattresses or stuff. Or any couches or any furniture that's had
pretty
pets.
much anything that a bed bug could possibly get into.
So, but I have a friend of a friend who's one of my friends has a brother who just bought a bunch of duplexes as a young man, which is like awesome. And I said,
so be able to at least stage them, if not throw some.
Exactly right. I said, would you like some old IKEA? And it was like, hell, he's like 20. It was like, oh yes, please. So I said, okay. Well, now the deal is you have to take them apart, and it's like, weirdly enough, I can't believe this. I actually saved the right Allen wrench.
the not really an Allen wrench.
This is like
Allen
20 years ago. This is like from 20. These are 20-year-old bed frames from IKEA. It's like, yeah. And it's like,
see, and I would immediately make the mistake of getting my impact wrench and
just going for it, baby.
A spax bit. And just strip that tinfoil screw right out.
Very tempting.
The really interesting thing about IKEA, and I'm speaking from lots and lots of experience.
I think a lot of us have had that, a lot of experience.
Is taking it apart and putting it back together. It never goes back
Chalk
together
and cheese,
quite
man.
the same.
Oh, interesting.
So different experiences.
I don't think I've ever done that.
Well, one of the reasons why is because IKEA, and we're not going to go deep into the history of IKEA. It's long and storied and complicated. But one of the things that I found interesting from an industrial / interior design point of view is that, number one, everything from IKEA, generally speaking, is made to be flat packed.
That's the whole concept, yeah.
That's what that's what their bread and butter is. What's butter in Swedish?
S'more.
Yeah, so bread and schmore.
By the way, I should just say that I have been in the original IKEA.
The OG IKEA?
Outside of Stockholm.
There.
Yeah, as a child when I lived in Uppsala, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, why putting a different spin on the idea of Stockholm syndrome when it comes to IKEA.
Yeah, see.
Yeah, but, the flat pack aspect. But the other aspect is that the vast majority of things that you buy from IKEA and you have to assemble, they are not solid until the very last
so true.
Screw is turned in.
Yeah.
Because everything is self-tensioning in an IKEA
and the
design.
Tolerances are like breathtakingly accurate, right? I mean, that's a killer.
They can be. The only thing that they still haven't really figured out is their combo, because their screws aren't really normally screws. They're screws with a keyhole in them to grab onto that weird little pin
that's going in from the other way.
And that's the barrel connectors.
The barrel connectors, and then it tensions the whole thing together.
Yeah, it's true.
The one thing, if people want to make their IKEA assembly experience better, more efficient, and just a little bit easier, and you want to know that thing's going to stay together, just when you put that screw in there, put a little bit of wood glue on it. Just a little bit, not a lot. It acts like Loctite, because the problem with those barrel screws that go into those actual threaded screws is with vibration, because the catch is on an angle, they'll back out. So all you got to do, and I mean, you don't want to fuse the thing together forever. A little bit of wood glue on that screw will hold it in place, and when you do have to disassemble it, you can break through that glue pretty easy.
So I've been on mute chuckling, because did you actually just use the phrase IKEA assembly experience? Did you really just say that?
Maybe.
Yes, he did.
I was thinking about, you made me think about, we were talking about this
That
before.
it does sound like I was really carrying the brand forward, didn't it? The whole corporate
You reminded
IKEA
me,
thing.
we should look to see if it's still available online. I remember years ago seeing a set of YouTube videos, right? Where
We were talking about this
where
earlier.
they gave this couple LSD and had them assemble IKEA furniture.
Oh, it's so much fun. They did a
priceless.
series.
Oh my
They did
God.
a
I love
series
that.
of. They did a series of that. The LSD people got completely and utterly
It was
confused. threw up
beautiful.
their
Oh
hand.
my God, it was beautiful.
The mushroom people just were completely overwhelmed by the whole experience, and the cannabis people were just kind of sat back and looked at this pile of stuff and went, "Do you feel like doing anything about it?" IKEA is a very interesting experience. I actually make quite a mention of IKEA in the book that I wrote that's coming out. And really, the thing that I take away from most IKEA experiences is the idea of instruction obstruction.
Oh,
Most people who've ever assembled an IKEA piece of whatever know that those instructions are both the most important thing in the room and completely useless.
I love the figure of the human that's always looking at things and trying to make
That
sense.
little guy.
That's
Yep.
funny.
With the
And the
nose,
thing
right?
is,
It's like, hello.
yeah, with the book, I made reference to that guy,
Oh,
and I knew that I couldn't get away with including the picture of
oh,
the guy.
yeah, probably copyrighted.
And so totally. And yeah, I want to piss off IKEA like I want to piss
No,
off
yeah,
Disney.
don't want to do that. No,
And so I had Chris re-render him to look similar but slightly
Not quite.
different.
Yeah, sufficient for.
Chris made a perfect
Enough to pass
he nailed
muster.
it.
That's
He
awesome.
nailed it.
That's
But-
awesome.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to interject something, just basically my thing on IKEA, since this is going to be an IKEA thing. One, I've never been in an IKEA store.
Wow.
Never been in one of those IKEA stores.
Never?
Nope. Ever.
How are you living in the 21st century and have successfully
they have
avoided
popcorn.
that?
I don't
They
know.
have meatballs.
Oh, Swedish meatballs, little fish, this cool fruity
See?
drink.
Ugh.
Oh my gosh, Andy, you
Chris
when,
has swallowed the Kool-Aid apparently.
Man,
apparently
What's
so.
Swedish for Kool-Aid?
when things are safe, we have got to kidnap Ty and pop his IKEA cherry.
I am not doing that to him. I like my friend.
I'm telling you right now, I have set up IKEA furniture before. Generally pretty easy. Of course, I have a mind of I can look at something and be able to visualize how it goes together without relying too heavily on the destructions.
Yeah, but you've also got a magic power of being able to fuck up anything simply by walking away and counting on it still working.
Well, and that's
Sorry, didn't mean to pull the curtain back.
you can edit this out, Andy. Fuck
I'm not
you.
going to. This is comedy gold.
Oh my gosh.
This is a big fuck you moment to Andy, folks.
Anyways,
If you
carry
could
on.
only
Yeah.
see what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, well, he's cleaning his backside.
At any rate,
At any rate,
putting it together, very little usable functionability or utility at all. I find. I think these things look really great, and I think that's what they're meant to do. Their pieces of furniture are supposed to look aesthetically good. Function is an afterthought at best. Anything that I've ever gotten from IKEA and put together has been within, and granted, I don't play easy with my toys, but has been needing to leave the house in a pile of rubble at least 6 months, and no more than 6 months after I've put it together.
what's interesting is something what you brought up is something that
brutal.
I will piggyback on, and that is the utility of the design of the thing as intended is not what you count on. There's a whole culture of IKEA hacks where somebody finds a much better use of an IKEA thing for some completely desperate odd
blowing shit up in the
something else
backyard.
entirely. Oh well, no, not so much that, but like, an IKEA cabinet it gets repurposed as a
Fire
shoe
starter.
My
a
first
shoe
sound
something.
booth, when I built my very first actual sound booth, it was out of IKEA bookcases.
Oh.
And I put 4 casters under one, and then I hinged it to a post in the room that I was in. And you could literally, it looked like a corner full of bookcases in the room until you walked up to it, grabbed one bookcase and pulled it out, and that was the door to get in. And I lined the whole thing with felt and material. It worked a champ. Wasn't particularly good at holding up books. Most of the shelves had fallen, but whatever.
When I think of IKEA furniture, I think of I'm a real estate agent. I want to make that open house look really good.
Staging.
So I'm just going to stage this stuff in here, and this is going to be the model house, but don't pull the book from the bookshelf because it will fall apart.
I got to say, though, the one thing that IKEA does make that's awesome is I'm a fan of their bookcases. No, their meatballs are terrible. Okay. I'm a fan of their bookcases. Everything that y'all here see is IKEA in this space. So when is the actual move date? Is
a week from Wednesday. I got an unnamed company with 2 guys in a truck who will be showing up, and then I will remove all of my stuff from here. And it's fun doing this downsizing thing. It's like people who are sort of like late boomers, like I am, in the late boomer category. Everybody my age right now is complaining about their parents who are in their 80s and 90s, and their parents haven't downsized or done anything. And now it's left to everybody. This is really this sort of, well, actually, I guess I'm going to go 50 years old and up, is having to relocate their parents. Yeah, I know. It's you guys too. So
fortunately, I don't have to relocate my parents.
Yeah, the Xers are having the same thing happen.
Pick the ash can up from here and set it over there.
Yeah. But so it's like, I'm downsizing a lot of stuff now that I don't need, and it's going to go to nephews and nieces and all the rest of that jazz. So once I get all this out, then it's just going to be I got junk people and Goodwill and Habitat for Humanity. They're just going to take everything else that's left in here. Then I clean it, and then it goes up for sale. There you go.
Nice.
Well, absolute best of luck on that. Well, listen, folks, that's pretty much what we've got is a mixed bag of what the fuck are you guys talking about now? But we will be back next time on Keep Your Hat On for Dr. Mark and Chris and Ty.
Ciao.
I'm Andrew Scott, and we will talk to you again really soon. And remember, keep your hat on. We may end up
miles from here.
Take care, folks. We'll talk to you again soon. Stay safe, wear your mask, get your boosters, and we'll talk to you again. Bye.
Well, there's a chunk of time you can't get back. From Portland, Oregon, this has been Keep Your Hat On, a big little show about a whole lot of nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is a narrowband broadcast network production in association with PodSquadPDX.com. Andrew Scott, executive producer. Robert Anthony and Chris Vicano, associate producers. Our theme music was written and produced by Andrew Scott, along with help from Ron Kajawa. Website design and maintenance by Vicano Creative, Chris Vicano Webmaster, available at VicanoCreative.com. Audio and video production by Andrew Scott, available at AndrewScottMedia.com. Got ideas or comments for the show? Email us at talkback@kyhopodcast.com, and don't forget to like, click, and subscribe. On behalf of the boys, I'm your announcer, Michael Brumage. Thanks for listening. I guess.
There, Ty, you can go. We got your segment.
Yep, that's good. Just fly me in on the rest of the conversation, and
I will do. I'll try to make sure that it's got like sound effects for magical sprinkles or something like that.
NBBN.
The Narrowband Broadcast Network.
The focus is on you.